Yeah, we've got a transmission coming in.
10-4.
Yeah, Brian, it's looking more and more like the Arizona Coyotes of the National Hockey League will be relocating to Utah next season.
Players and management has been told they are on their way. They will play next season in Salt Lake City.
The state is a sports state, which leads me to this.
Yes, it is. Welcome in live to the Delta Center. It is time to meet Utah's NHL franchise.
I'll answer it for him for the umpteenth time.
What?
That's right. Welcome back to the Puck Drop Podcast. I'm Cole, the NHL Music Man Chapman. I'm here with Lieutenant Dingle D, Destin Edgington, and we are brought to you by Hockey Stops. Local shop in Ogden. They just opened up a new shop in Logan. Make sure you check them out. And they're actually hooking us up with custom pucks. All the guests that we bring on, we're going to give them a custom Puck Drop Podcast puck.
Well, we might do a little if so facto to where they sign one, we keep one.
Yeah.
So,
we'll figure that out. But Corey hooked it up at Hockey Stops, and
thank you, Corey.
It was like $2 to $3 per puck. So if you need custom pucks, make sure to hit up Hockey Stops. We are here with
the man,
the
myth,
the
absolute legend, Jay Stevens.
What? Jay Stevens.
Don't what me?
Who's a myth? So welcome on, Jay Stevens. Seriously, thank you for taking time out of your day and whatever you do.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be part of the show. I'm glad you guys have a show. It's fun to have other people.
Yep.
I love Utah hockey, so the more shows, the merrier, and you guys are doing a good job.
Yep. And I'm sure everybody knows Jay Stevens is the host of the KSL Sports Podcast, the Puck Report. Yep. So make sure you check that out. He does a lot of great player interviews, coach interviews, very team oriented with the Utah Hockey Club. So don't skip a beat. Make sure you check him out. Hey,
the guy is a stud. He knows too much. I never thought I'd say that. He knows too much.
He knows a lot. And we're excited to have him on here. And I'm excited to interview Jay because I feel like he interviews a lot of people, but he never gets interviewed.
Yeah, it's nice to be on the other side.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's
I just sit back, let you guys do all the work. Just answer some questions. Nice.
Yeah. So I'm excited about that. So
what button do you want pushed first?
Yeah, let's push. See what you got.
What button you talking about?
Start clicking, dude.
Well, I want to dive into some history of Jay Stevens first. I want to know what your story is.
Okay.
And I want to know how you got involved into hockey. Let's go into three things here. How you got involved into hockey, how you started playing and whatnot, and then how you got involved in KSL Sports Podcast, and then how you got involved into the Utah Hockey Club.
Okay.
One at a time.
Yeah, I got it.
Let's break it down.
I can almost keep track of all three questions. So on the first one, because I'm originally from St. George, and when I moved to Salt Lake, and I moved into the Murray area, I skateboarded, and cool. I was hanging around with a couple kids that were skateboarders, and this kid Drew Radcliffe is one of my all-time best friends. Just passed away 2 years ago. He's the one I was telling about gave me his golf clubs.
Yep. Shout out
to Chovy, as we called him.
Chovy.
So
shout out.
He was like, "Hey, we're gonna go skateboard to this kid's house. He's got a quarter pipe in his backyard, but just know that his dad is the Murray High hockey coach." So we could go skate, but you're going to have to play some shinny hockey out in the circle.
Nice.
And I was like, oh, that's cool. I've never played hockey. I didn't know what hockey was. So I went and we watched some hockey on TV. I got to see the Edmonton Oilers versus the Philadelphia Flyers in the Stanley Cup playoffs. It was like 88, 89, something like that, probably before that. And so I'm watching Grant Fuhrer and Ron Hextall play hockey, and I'm like, those two are amazing. I want to be goalie.
Yeah.
And I think Bill Miller, Jeremy Miller's father, his eyes probably got really huge. He's like, we don't have any goalies, so we need goalies. So I'm like, I had done karate my whole life. I'd played baseball my whole life, so I could do the splits.
Yeah.
And I could catch things. And I did that for a couple summers, and then as my sophomore year at Murray was approaching, they're like, hey, you should you should play hockey. And I was dead set at that point. I was so in. I'd gone to a
Sold.
couple Eagles games now, and I was like, I'm in. So I borrowed goalie pads from a kid named Jeff Tavey, and who's now known as by Jeff Elwell. But he loaned me his gear, and I tried out for Murray High, made the team, went to a camp put on by Paul Skidmore, and learned how to became the starting goalie for Murray.
It's kind of funny that you say that because, like, the whole time growing up in my era, right, and I'm young, I want to be a goalie. My cousin got me into hockey. Rex, shout out again. But it's funny because I wanted to be a goalie.
Yeah.
And then it came down to the championship in-house. I'm like 5 years old, maybe. They strapped me up in pads, went out and won the championship. I'm 3-0 as a goalie, and that's men's league too.
and one of those games, one of those games was like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly. But
Definitely
regard,
not
though,
3-0. I got a lot more losses than I got wins. But
and I'm not a goalie.
well, that works.
It's
Hey,
just
I know your official stats, and we're going to dive into that later.
It's fundamentals. It's fundamentals. Yeah. It's fundamentals. You're going to learn that as you go.
So then after that, I bounced around a lot. My junior year, the coach wanted me to get better, so he sent me to a camp in Faribault, Minnesota. And while I was there, I kind of made friends with, and then also kind of weaseled my way into Shattuck St. Mary's. They had a baseball program. They knew I came from Murray High, which had one of the best baseball programs around. I was barely good enough to make the Murray High team.
Oh,
But I was definitely good enough to play baseball in some prep school in Minnesota, and I was decent at soccer. Nice. So Shattuck was like, yeah, stay here. So I started that my junior year at Shattuck St. Mary's, and the time that they were like, they sent the bill, I didn't realize you had to pay to go to that school.
Oh.
So I was telling Bill Miller, I'm like, hey, they want $18,000 for me to go to high school here. And they said that I have to start over because Murray High doesn't count. So basically I'm a sophomore again.
Oh, no.
And Bill's like, I'm not paying for, I don't know where you're going to get $18,000. So I just came back and I finished the year I finished my junior year at Murray. And then I just stayed there. And then, like I said, I bounced around or whatever. I'd been a radio DJ from the time I was 12. I was on Power 99, and then I was one of the first ever DJs
Here in
at
Utah?
K-Bear. Yeah.
Okay.
It's B98.7
And my
now.
dad knows your name.
Yeah,
so.
I bounced around quite a bit. So, and then I was with K-Bear. From the minute K-Bear went on the air, I was one of their first DJs. Yep. And I was the bear sometimes. I was whatever. Mm-hmm. And
good-looking son of a gun.
Yeah.
I left. I came back, and I eventually, after 20 years of being a firefighter, I got back into radio.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Cutting you
I
off.
appreciate it.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah. I think my daughter's in the Army, and that's like legit service. I feel like I'm just
thank you. Hey, thank your daughter for her service.
She's
as well.
amazing.
I'm going to bring up something real quick.
All right, let's
So this episode is going to air on September 10th.
Oh, okay.
So the day before September 11th.
Yeah.
And you know what? The first responders
343.
don't get enough shout outs. They don't get enough,
recognition.
Exactly. They don't get enough recognition. So we're going to shout you out. Thank you for your service.
Hey,
even though
appreciate it.
it's
And your
not
daughter.
military, you are important and everything that you're doing.
Thank
and
your
everybody
daughter.
else.
Yeah. Thanks to my daughter.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that's something else. 343 firefighters. That doesn't even count the paramedics because they're separate there.
Of course.
All the first responders that sacrificed themselves that year and on that day, and that's a big deal for us, obviously. And I didn't realize that this episode was going to come out then.
Well, I didn't either, but
yeah. So so anyway, I end up back on the radio, and I went into KSL. I was doing stuff for 103.5 The Arrow and for FM 100, and they were starting to get more into podcasts. And I said, hey, I want to do a hockey podcast. And they're like, well, no one will listen to it. And I said, well, nobody else is covering hockey at all here.
Yeah.
So I remember the guy who was over sales at the time was like, I just see it as a passion project. But if you think you could get a sponsor, and like we can't pay you much, but if you could get a sponsor, we could probably cover it. Mm-hmm. And so I hit some of the hockey community up, and I said I went to Bountiful Mazda, I went to Jersey Mike's because those are hockey guys to the core, and they both said, yeah, we're on board. So that funded the go ahead, the green light for the first year of the Utah Puck Report. And like I was telling you guys before, I started with like.
And what year was that? Utah Puck Report.
I don't know. We just started. This is our 9th season.
Okay.
I'd
So
say
I've got
like
8
early
seasons.
thousands.
Yeah.
give or take?
Episodes? Or
Well, I mean, I know you have a ton. Well, early years.
Yeah.
Early
So
2000s.
in the early, yeah. So anyway, we're like 500 listeners or downloads or whatever, and then it got to 1,000, and they're like, "Wow, 1,000's way more than we ever thought we'd get." And then I kept having guests like Trevor Lewis or, I had Danny Briere, Luke Robitaille, and so when you tag those guys, when you get big guests like that, and you tag them, all of a sudden you get more global. So all of a sudden I was at 17,000 downloads or something like that. And they were like, okay, this is legit. Now I went.
The guy's actually doing what's right. Let's keep
I went to this meeting one time. I'm sitting next to Scott Mitchell, longtime quarterback, NFL quarterback, played for the U. And I'm sitting next to Thurl Bailey. And we're in this meeting, and they're talking about their podcasts, right?
Hey, Thurl Bailey just accepted my friend request.
Oh, nice. He's the nicest guy in the world.
I don't know when I even sent a friend request, but he just accepted
He hits me up. He's like, dude, you got to see this. Thurl Bailey just accepted my friend request.
Thurl Bailey is that guy where...
He's a good guy. I've met him when I was a kid.
Shout out Thurl.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Bailey, let's go.
But as they're putting up all the stuff, they've got slides saying, hey, this is how this podcast is doing. This is how this podcast is doing. And then they just kind of mention the Utah Puck Report, which had more. I didn't even have my own slide. They literally just wrote it on the dry erase board. They're like, oh yeah, the Utah Puck Report, we have that too. And by the way, it's got 3 times the amount of downloads as all our other podcasts. Wow. And I'm like, and I can't get a slide? Can I get a better office now? Like,
I know.
But anyway,
so that goes to show the Utah hockey community is huge. It's bigger than I think people think it is, or think it used to be prior to.
I think now we've kind of shown that where we sold out a building and and I don't know how many of those people were true hockey fans or they just want to be part of this, but
there's a lot of
there's definitely a hockey following here.
Yeah, absolutely, and shout out to anything with that. I mean, this is incredible.
Yeah.
It's incredible, and keep going because I'm loving the stories. I mean, I don't care what sport it is, I freaking love it, dude.
I've just been having a great time, and it's funny because I was like, all right, well, I cover high school, I cover travel team, I cover all of our club colleges, and I'm like, at some point you think you're going to run out of stuff to talk about, but there's always more stuff going on.
There's plenty.
But at one point I told my wife, because my wife's like, all right, it's time to kind of simmer down a little bit. And I said, there's one story I really want to tell before I throw in the towel on the Utah Puck Report. And that is I really wanted to get the Manic family together because you've got their whole family's been playing here forever. And then you had Mason Manic, go play in Portland. And then
so for the new fans, for Hockey for Dummies, we call it, explain the Manic family.
So the Manic family, there's Brandon and Bryce, they're my age. Brandon and I played together for a long time. But then Brandon's dad, Holger, who was playing men's league when I was just a pup here when I was first playing, and then his dad, Gunter, they've all played here. So you had the grandpa, the dad, and then you had Mason, the son. So we had 4 or 5 generations of Manics. And I was like, and
they all played in the NHL?
No. None of them played in the NHL.
No.
Okay.
But
we're talking about
Hockey for Dummies here.
Well, you just said Gunther too, but we got Gunther out of St. George.
But okay. So, but Brandon Manic, he played with me at Weber. His son, Mason, became the best player coming out of Utah for a while. And he went and played 4 years of major juniors with the Portland Winterhawks, went undrafted, came back, played for the Utah Grizzlies. And he was having an amazing year, but because he was undrafted, the Grizzlies got in a desperate situation because they needed a goalie. So they made a trade with Cincinnati, picked up a goalie. That goalie tested positive for COVID on that road trip. He never ended up playing, but the terms were for a player to be named later. So at the end of season 1 for Mason, he had 55 points as an undrafted. He was our best. Wow. He was our best unsigned player. This is 3 years ago. 4 years ago.
I was going to say, I heard about that.
So Cincinnati grabbed him.
I'm trying to think if it was when I was doing the music or not. Probably not. So my last year doing the music was 2019.
I remember that.
So anyway, Cincinnati grabs Mason, and they don't. Mason doesn't want to play anymore. But and Mason's sister's also playing. She's with the U19 Junior Grizz now. So I'm like, that's a story I want to tell. I want to tell all of it. I want to start from the dad. I want to start all the way down, and I want to know more about, because as you're growing up around here, you have all these teams come in, and they're like, hey, we're AAA/AA or whatever.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of pitfalls to that. So I wanted to have the Manics in to talk about that. So that was going to kind of be my whole thing. Like,
I love it.
If you were a parent raising a kid, this is what you should do.
Got you.
These are the pitfalls to avoid. These are the type of people to avoid. And these are the type of people to seek out. That was what I really wanted to tell. But I kept having a hard time getting all of them on the podcast at the same time. So I kept going. And then they just kept being more stories. And then the answer to your third part of your question is, one day I got an email from the Utah Jazz saying, hey, we just found your podcast. We've been listening to all the episodes. And we've been reading your articles. And we're wondering if you'd want to do an article on what might happen if we got to NHL in Utah. And I said, yeah. I had a conversation with them for, 15 minutes.
How long ago was this, do you think? Yeah.
February.
Yeah. Okay. Wow.
So
quick turnaround here.
Yeah. Here we go.
Here we go.
They say, hey, do you want to talk? And I said, yeah. I jump on the phone call and I'm talking to somebody. They're like, okay, well, what's going to happen? They're like, we're really impressed with your conversation, but what's going to happen is at the end of the Jazz season, we'll invite you in, let you take some pictures of the Delta Center and see what it's going to look like if we make changes that would be different from how we host the Frozen Fury. I'm like, okay, perfect. And then they said, okay, we'll get in touch with you at the end of the season. And then like 15 minutes later, I got another email like, hey, the president of the Jazz would like to talk to you and the director of communications would like to talk to you. So then I jump on a phone call with them. And the whole time I'm across the street at KSL. I'm like, I can just come over if you guys want.
Do you want me to walk over there and check it out with you? Or?
The next phone call goes really well. And that 15-minute conversation turned into an hour conversation. And then they finished the same way. They said, okay, cool. At the end of the season, which will be like in a month and a half, we'll have you come over and, we'll show you around the Delta Center. I'm like, all right, perfect. 5 minutes later, I get another email that says, Ryan Smith wants to meet with you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Can you be here? I'm like, yeah. I'll be there.
Well, of course.
I'll call in sick or whatever.
I'll be there.
So I'm like, I'll be there.
Job?
So yeah.
What job did I have before?
Yeah. So I met with Ryan and he was just like, hey, look, I think we could really get a team here. It's like a 2 to 5 year project. This could really happen.
2 months.
Yeah.
2 months later.
Do you want to, like, hey, oops. Let's do this. Let's have a series of podcasts. Yeah. Shout out to Ryan, our savior, right? And he's like, he agreed to do a series of podcasts with me, which each one would address a different issue with bringing the NHL in.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, let's set up the first podcast for this date. And then I get a phone call that morning saying, hey, Ryan has to change this meeting. And I'm like, okay, no big deal. Can I ask why? And they're like, yeah, because the NHL is coming right now. Oh. And I'm like, how? What?
It's already happened. Sorry, but
and they're like,
Jay,
don't say anything to anybody,
yeah.
but it's happening right now.
Jay, you're the guy. Let's go.
So you were probably the first. You're patient zero.
I was in there, and I could tell you one of the coolest things is, I talked to Ryan again, and then I kept in touch with his director of communications, and she called me. She's like, hey, Ryan's going to purchase the team right now. He's flying to New York to the NHL, and he's going to purchase it.
Oh, yeah, with
then
Gary.
He's going to call you.
With Bettman?
Yeah, the whole thing, right?
You know how, yeah.
She's like, then he's going to call you. And I said, why on earth would he call me? And I'm like, as the media guy, or am I...
Like, what do I got to do?
Here?
How do I prepare?
Because they're like,
how do I prepare?
You're the only guy that's been covering the media. I'm like, oh, what questions do I ask?
How do I prepare?
What questions do I ask?
Yeah.
So then I called my boss. I called my boss and I'm like, what do I even say? She's like, ask what they're going to call it. I'm like, that's brilliant.
Well, and in all fairness, I'm not trying to take away from anything, but we went to the draft party, got invited because I coach, and I was the only one that asked questions.
Yeah.
And everybody was getting all mad at me, and I'm
had,
like, no, I got plenty of them. You
know? They had Gunther up there interviewing, and everybody's like,
Josh
does anybody
Doan
have questions for him? And nobody raised their hand. And Destin's like, it was interesting. We asked like all 5 questions.
Well, I felt bad because they had to walk her all the way around with the microphone to walk all the way back to me. And I'm like, just stay here.
Yeah.
I got all the questions.
And I was like, I don't know. I didn't on the ones before that. It's the same thing. Like I'd gone to all the other meetings, and I'm like, I already did the interview. Like I've already done all these interviews with everybody before we go into the press pit. So I'm like, I don't even have any questions to ask because I've already asked them. So then I just sit there and I don't know if I look dumb or whatever, but I'm just happy. I'm like, just taking it all in, just happy to be here. Cannot believe this is happening.
Yeah. So you told us a story about how Ryan wanted the team to be called the Falcons.
Yeah, and I don't know how much of that I'm supposed to say, but we talked about names, and I remember it was one of the first times we were sitting around talking, And first off, I wore, I was wearing
Blue?
famously, I was wearing a Vegas Golden Knights hoodie the day I went and met him.
Took that away.
And he's
That's
like,
my team. That's my
Took
jersey.
that
up
away.
there.
Well, look.
Get that out of here.
Until now, right?
8 years
Get that out
ago,
of here.
7 or 8 years ago or whatever, I was like, this is the closest I'll ever be to an
That's-
NHL
that's
team.
why-
This is my
yeah.
team.
Well,
so I was
facts.
doing the music
I mean,
at the
for
Grizzlies,
real.
and I was like,
And
well,
you're
I
not
need a
wrong.
team.
Yeah.
And that's when the Vegas Golden Knights happened, and I was like, perfect.
Yeah,
They're
same.
close to us.
I thought that would be perfect.
Yep.
You know what's
But-
closer? That Blackhawks jersey.
So anyway, I don't know. I was wearing that stuff and we started talking about names and I don't remember who brought it up, but he's like, yeah, the Falcons kill at like 200 miles an hour. That's how they hunt their prey, 150, 200 miles an hour. And so all these people that are like, oh, Ryan's already got it figured out. He already knows. He doesn't. He's 100% being honest.
yeah.
And he's told me from like,
Bought
this
in.
is a community
Typical
asset.
Utah,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like we all love each other. We all want to help each other.
And to be honest with you, like the sport is a sports state. If
Yeah,
you
it
watch
is.
the podcast, you're gonna know that.
Yeah.
Like, we have fun doing what we do, but we work hard for what we have. And I'll tell you right now, sports inevitable, absolutely.
There's a lot of cool things
Absolute.
that happen here.
And I
There's a
love
lot
the
of cool
Falcon
things that
idea.
happen here.
And
I
I
thought the
wish
Falcon
that would
idea
have
was
got
cool, too.
pushed.
It's interesting
Yeah.
that wasn't on the ballot. So
I thought
I'm kind of
so he asked
bummed
me
about that though. I'm not
And
gonna lie.
I was telling you guys,
That's-
like when I e-bugged for the Vancouver Canucks, I was talking to their management and talking to them about bringing them in the AHL here because they were trying to, but they couldn't get into the Maverick Center, so they started looking at the Delta Center. And then we sat down in one meeting and we just started talking about names that wouldn't be offensive. And we went through all this stuff and finally I kind of came up. I can't remember if I came up with it or my son Tegan came up with it, but one of us started talking about powder hounds. And how that's such a Utah thing, right? Like, or it's a ski thing.
Yep.
Maybe not a
Yeah,
Utah
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Yep.
But you can't be offended by it. It's a dog that goes, or, it's a skier.
Yeah.
And then the logo would be.
a ski
Well,
bump.
and then it kind of
So-
came to Black Diamonds, and
Yeah.
it kind of rolled
Yeah,
into
that all came
different
up.
Yeah.
things. And
But so when the votes came out, I noticed Falcons weren't on there, and instead of powder hounds, it just had powder. And I'm
Yeah.
like, nobody's gonna vote
You're
for
like, what?
powder.
No.
well, and I
there
did
was
see,
even
I did
ice.
see powder. I did see powder hounds flying around a little bit.
It could have been just
On
me
that.
though,
Chitter
too.
chatter.
Well,
Because I was
yeah.
putting it on everything.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
you've got a network, but
So
at the end of the day,
my-
too,
my
though,
thought
like,
was-
there's a lot of. I wanted the Golden Eagles
yeah, that was really high. I know that was really
because,
high up there,
in
but
all
it's
fairness, like that's
Well, it wasn't even.
that's
on the
going to lead into the next segment.
Yeah.
But like, you've got history here with that.
yeah.
You know what I
And-
mean?
but-
like, there's a
ballot.
but
That's part of the
hold
problem
on,
too.
It's owned by
yeah.
people in Detroit. It's not
I
Utah.
know.
It's not Utah.
No,
The Hell
no, it's
family
not.
owns it.
Exactly.
And they're Utah?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I was
didn't
just
know
gonna
that
say the
part
same
of it.
thing.
Yeah. Interesting.
But that's the problem is that like you could have a huge rivalry with that. You know, you got the Golden Knights and the Golden Eagles,
Yeah. So we couldn't be golden anything.
but we could have
Yeah.
been
The
the
NHL
Eagles
said
or
no
the
to that right
Flying
away.
Eagles or
Yeah.
the Eagles.
So the NHL was like, no.
Utah
it's
Eagles.
not.
They wanted to go. Like we're talking about fighting.
But I
Eagles,
do like the Falcons. And in
Yeah.
regard to the
Yeah.
same
Would've been cool.
concept.
Yep.
Yeah. And
Yep.
then kind of have the same concept of color to an extent.
Yeah.
You
but,
know.
but Ryan being true to his word, he let it go to a
of
vote.
course, of course. And,
And, you know,
and we're not taking away from anything, but
Every
like,
kid you ask
Right.
wants Yeti. Every kid.
Absolutely.
of course. And that's the upbringing.
Absolutely.
So
And-
yeah.
And there's a lot of arguments of people, on the Facebook pages and whatnot.
And
like,
you know what? Like,
well,
I
this
mean,
is-
we could
this is
sit
for
there
the kids
exactly.
and-
As us adults, we sat there and we've talked about the Outlaws and
I love Outlaws.
well, yeah, you got like we said, Butch Cassidy.
Yeah.
You've got the penalty box,
the shootout.
the shootout.
Yeah.
like,
What else
there's
I
a lot
really
of
liked too, though, that
variables,
never
but-
made it anywhere, and is a traditional hockey name, is Fighting Saints.
Yeah,
And I think that ties into
Oh,
Utah.
yeah.
And it's a traditional hockey thing, but
Yep.
it's a no. Like,
nailed it. But
But
that's
so
exactly.
now we know what
But,
we've got.
well,
We've
right.
got 6 names left. We probably only have 3.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Although Utah Hockey Club's really growing on people.
I don't
I
want to be
don't
a
hate
soccer
it.
team.
Okay,
A lot of
I'm gonna
Jay,
call
I'm
you out on
gonna
this.
I'm gonna call
Squash
you
it.
out on this.
I'm gonna call you
I'm
out.
with you, Jay. Squash it.
If you go back and do the research on the NHL for all, and this is for all you
18,
all
what,
you
90?
yahoos that freaking email me every time I
love
post something
it.
with the Utah Hockey Club. I can't call people out on my show.
Call them out.
Call them out. on ours.
All these people that say Utah Hockey Club is soccer, it's not traditional. Go back and look at the first 15 winners of the Stanley Cup.
Yep.
It's the Toronto Hockey Club. It's a Montreal
Yep.
Hockey Club.
And they're
So if you-
still doing it in like Russia. and
Chicago
everything.
Hockey Club.
And if you
Yeah.
want to go traditional, it doesn't. That's the beginning of it all.
Yep.
So So
kind of brought that up too.
So that's
I
kind of
brought
the
it
end
up
of
on
it.
like episode
No,
3, dude.
no,
I was
no.
like, hey, I'm going to squash this
But-
right now.
I know, but
I brought it
I
up.
don't want to be Yeti.
I don't even care anymore.
I don't-
I'm fine with Utah.
That's where
I'm just so pumped. I'm just so
hate
pumped to have the NHL here.
Yeah.
I
don't
love
hate you at
Mammoth.
all.
I don't
Mammoth
love
is
Venom.
cool.
We love Matt.
No.
I love
Venom's
Mammoth, and the
dumb.
guy that did that Mammoth logo that I put on the Utah Puck Report, phenomenal.
Yep.
Nick Archer?
Absolute. It might have been.
Might have been.
Nick, yeah.
I don't know. I've
You know who
Hey,
Nick
yeah, I know who he is.
He's a
I-
tattoo
I-
guy.
I am going to let, as soon as we have a logo, Nick's going to do, I will do a tattoo. I'm thinking
Hey,
about
I'm
it
probably
right
right there with you. We're going to
I'm
do it
getting
on
mine
here.
right here.
All right,
We're going to do
Let's
it
do it
right
together.
here.
I'm
All
running
right
out of-
here.
yeah, I'm
He's
running
going
out
to
of
sit
spots,
right
but-
here and we're all going to get buzzed.
Live?
Yeah,
Yep.
I'm down.
No, I'm
down.
serious. I'm so down.
There's no way I could do it on my show because KSL is against
Yeah,
tattoos.
no.
Oh, no,
Let's
no,
do
no.
it here.
Our show.
We'll bring him
Yes,
in. All right.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as the names go, like I just want to watch hockey.
I agree.
I don't care what we
And
call
you know
it.
what, though?
Yeah.
Like, and you're not wrong. It's one of those things where we finally have something
Yeah.
and let's become everything.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that starts with youth all the way up to the NHL.
And I went and I packed up 75% of my King stuff, all of my Knight stuff, and I just put it in a box.
Well,
I even filmed it because I was going to put it on my thing. I was going to put it on the Utah Puck Report because
And
I bought one of everything.
you know what sucks is that I
Utah Hockey
tease.
Club.
I tease about the Blackhawks, but I might have to pack my shit up
Yeah,
too.
you might have to.
I said the
Hey,
word.
you have a hometown team now.
Yeah.
I know.
I've never had that before.
Yep.
Me either. So
And one thing I want to mention, okay, so this ties into me wanting to be the music man. Hire it as much as you can. Hire Utahns. You know, I understand you, and you
well,
kind of said,
Ryan's always said stay local.
well, yeah, and you said there's a lot of
We're
people
keeping
coming
it
from the
local.
NFL and the NBA, and they're getting these jobs.
We're keeping it local.
Us Utahns have more passion than Joe Schmo out there.
Oh, you'd be surprised.
You know, on the East Coast or whatever.
You'd be surprised.
Look at the Utahns. Give them a chance. Give me a chance. Give everybody a chance.
Yeah,
right?
I think
Including
that's
Jay.
I think
Like,
that's definitely the plan. I think one of the things Ryan's held true to that he said in a press conference is he said he didn't want any of those people to lose their jobs.
Right.
yeah.
So he offered those
That's
jobs
fair.
to Arizona people.
That's
a
fair.
lot of those guys came over. I've been working with a lot of them.
without
They've
a
been amazing.
doubt. But they also talk a lot of schmutz.
Yeah, I don't know. Like it's
Jay's like, I can't say that.
everybody that I've met. Everybody's excited to be here. Everybody that's came over is excited to be
Yeah.
here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And deserving. I mean, if they've been there, they've been there.
Yeah.
But we're here to take it over.
All right. Well,
Arizona's having another team come back, so
this flew by.
It's our time
This
now.
is part 1 of the Puck Drop podcast with Jay Stevens. Thank you for tuning in. Stay tuned on Thursday, right? We're going to release part 2 on Thursday. Make sure you don't go anywhere. This episode is honestly, this interview is just barely getting started.
we're not even done yet.
We're
There's
going
a
to
lot
drop
to
some
unpack.
juicy stuff, and we want to hear Jay's opinion on it in part 2. So make sure you check it out. This has been the Puck Drop Podcast. We are sponsored by Hockey Stops. Make sure you check them out. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you on Thursday.